Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, Julie Chetney.
Here.
Karen Sarsa Diaz I.
Here.
Hello. Pretty Subramaniam. I see you, Pretty. Trish Gonzalez.
Here.
Bill Stewart.
Here.
Chris Schlanzer.
Here.
Joseph Wong.
Here.
Bruce is not here. Jay Dixit. No? Okay.
She should be here any time. She and I were texting just a few minutes ago.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for her.
Yeah.
Sam Yee. Sam here.
Don't see him.
Okay, I don't see him either. Richard Centeno.
I'm here.
Hey, Richard. Philip Lloyd.
I'm here, Erica.
Hello. And Tina Wright.
Here.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Jay. Hi. Okay, you have a quorum. I'm going to ask if everybody can please mute themselves. Okay, you have a quorum, Julie.
Thank you very, very much. All right, it is wonderful to see everyone here today. Let us take a review of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do we need to make any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes,
Julie,
please.
Rosa has a I'm sorry.
Oh, after you go ahead, Erica. You can do it.
Rosa has a request.
Okay.
Good evening, board members and board president. I am asking to present on guidelines for mitigated conflicts for delegated conservatorships on behalf of Daniela Santana and our client services division.
Okay. And I did know that that was coming. And so this, pardon me, this addition to tonight's agenda is just more time sensitive than anything. So we're going to, do I have a motion to amend tonight's agenda as stated?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Trish.
A second.
Thank you, Bill. Can't even see. Still looking. Trish, I know you're there somewhere. I just haven't seen you yet. There you are. Hi. Okay. All right. Any discussion with the motion to amend the agenda?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. Hold on to that one. We're going to need you again. All right. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion carries. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, let's go on to our public comment. Do we have any for tonight?
Yes, we have Mr. Carl Argila.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Argila, please go ahead.
Okay, Erica, can I ask you again for audio check? I'm doing video a little differently this evening. That is great, thank you. Good evening again, board. My name is Carl Argila. I am the father of Cavan Argila, an intellectually disabled deaf client of the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. Tonight's San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center board meeting, including my comments, are being recorded under the provisions of the Bagley-Keene Act and will be posted for public review on my blog at www.sgprc.net. And I have posted that in chat for the group. And I note in reviewing your agenda tonight that you will be training with Judith Enright. Once again, I want to direct the board to an article which we published regarding Miss Enright's legal representation of your agency. And I'm going to post that URL in chat so you have it available. In our opinion, Miss Enright's impact on the lives of many developmentally disabled persons has been devastating for decades. And worse yet, Ms. Enright has violated the California Bar Association's code of professional ethics by making false statements in her representation of your agency. And if anything that I've said isn't true, Ms. Enright would have sued me into oblivion years ago. Every time you bring Ms. Enright into your board meetings, it is a slap in the face of the developmental disabilities community. However, I'm here for other comments. Once again, I am requesting that you terminate your conservatorship of my son, Cavan Argila. As you know, your agency has filed a declaration with probate court opposing my petition to terminate your conservatorship of my son. You have placed my son in a group home against his will. My son, who had a 9-year employment history as a truck unloader at Walmart and was active in the deaf community, remains in your group home, unemployed and isolated from the deaf community. In addition, you have denied my son his right to have Sylvia Monod as his service coordinator. Ms. Monod is your designated service coordinator for deaf clients. You created this position of service coordinator for deaf clients as part of a settlement agreement when a class action lawsuit was filed against you on behalf of my son and 4,999 other deaf clients. Why wouldn't you follow your own policy and assign Ms. Monod, the service coordinator for deaf clients, to my son's case? And in fact, board, I was in the federal court hearing when you agreed to that settlement agreement. I was one of the objectors to that settlement agreement because, as I told the judge, you are not credible people and you will not abide by the decision you agreed to. And damned if you didn't do it. You're not abiding by the agreement you agreed to. Wow. Recently, as you know, the Department of Developmental Services has issued guidelines to mitigate conflicts for delegated conservatorships. Those guidelines include providing a pathway out of conservatorship for clients who do not want to be conserved. I'm glad to hear, board, that you're going to do your job and actually consider that matter. And perhaps you'll actually comply with DDS guidelines and provide a pathway for my son to be free of your conservatorship. Finally, any parent hearing my voice tonight should take note. No matter how consumer-friendly the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center may appear to you, no matter how broad and appealing Ms. Chutney may smile in these meetings, the fact of the matter is they have the power to become your child's conservator and ruin your life. Finally, I'm requesting that the official minutes of this board meeting accurately state that I'm requesting that you terminate your conservatorship of my son. So thanks so much, board. I'll be with you again in your December meeting.
Thank you very much for that. And we'll be here in December. Let's move on now to our consent.
You have one more.
Oh, thank you very much for that. Okay.
It's Albert Feliciano.
All right. Sorry. Thank you, Albert. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Ms. Chetney. Well, good evening, Ms. Chetney, committee members, regional center staffing, community members. I'm Albert Feliciano with the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. I do have a few announcements, which are my regular announcements, so please bear with me. Our office continues to provide weekly statewide trainings, and those are taking place every Monday at 10 a.m. Our current series is focusing on the regional center system, and the topic for next Monday is learning the appeals process. So I do invite any parents here, any self-advocates, any professionals that want to learn more about the appeals process, the rights that families are entitled to under the appeals process, how the process works. I do invite you. I will be sharing the flyer in the chat after my announcement. So please do invite other people who may benefit from this training. This coming Monday will be in English. The following Monday will be the same topic, but in Spanish. So again, these trainings are open to the public. All are welcome. My second announcement is that we continue to provide statewide trainings on SDP orientation. So it's my understanding that Regional Center continues to provide self-determination program orientation for families. The orientation that the State Council provides is an additional option for families or self-advocates, individuals served to take the orientation. We do understand that sometimes the scheduling may not work due to employment or school, so we do provide additional times, which may be in the evenings, even on the weekend. So I will be posting the link in the chat after my announcement. I will be posting the website where you guys can go and look at the schedule and see if you would like to sign up for our SDP orientation. Our orientation aligns very closely, or if not, it's almost exactly as the regional center's orientation, given that we did contract with DDS to provide these orientations. Approximately 2 weeks after completing the orientations, families will get, or whoever takes the orientation will receive a certificate of completion, which then can be presented to the regional center to proceed with the transition process. And lastly, I have one more, but we do have a vacancy for the LVAC committee. As you may know, if you don't know, the council does appoint half of the committee members to the self-determination, the LVAC, sorry, I forgot the entire name, but for the LVAC committee. So if anyone here is interested to local volunteer advisory committee for self-determination, if anyone here is interested in applying for that, to become a member of that committee as an SCDD appointee, please let me know and I can walk you through the process. I can let you know how to complete the application. And hopefully you can join us as an LVAC member for the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. Thank you so much, Ms. Chetney, for this time, and thank you, Erica.
Thank you so much for that. My apologies. I didn't realize that you had public input too.
No worries. No, thank you.
Very valuable indeed as well. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
That was it.
Thank you. I will ask next time. We're going to move on to our consent agenda, and I'm going to ask that Rosa present what we have amended our agenda tonight for, please.
Thank you so very much for your time. I will be, if I may, share my screen.
Yes, Rosa, you can share.
To bring attention to you regarding the original DDS conservatorship, DDS directive, requesting every agency to provide guidelines to DDS for mitigating conflicts and establishing an individual that will be the focal point for delegated conservatorships. This was established or issued on July 31st. Every regional center is given 120 days to come up with some guidelines. The one that we will be proposing next in the next attachment addresses all areas that are needed to be covered. And primarily it's in 3 sections. The guidelines are supposed to address the responsibilities by the regional centers as delegated conservators whenever any conflicts arise. So the first one talks about the responsibilities, and the second section addresses the day-to-day staff requirements for that individual that will be designated to oversee those that are conserved by DDS or whose conservatorships have been delegated to the regional centers. A highlight is that this individual will be meeting with all of those individuals at least once every 3 months. And then the third portion of this is training that will be provided to the individual that will be meeting with conservatees on a quarterly basis, which include the ombudsman for DDS, as well as the liaison to the department. Now I'm going to switch real quickly to the draft outline guidelines that were presented and submitted for this committee's review. We just reviewed it with the Client Services Advisory Committee, and they approved for it to be presented here. We're under a tight deadline in the sense that we need to submit our guidelines to DDS by November 30th. And since this board is not meeting until December, we humbly request that you review, submit any comments or recommendations, and if we could move forward with approving the guidelines and submitting them to DDS for review. Again, these guidelines paraphrase what's required in the guidelines issued by DDS by breaking down the delegated conservator responsibilities, which is the first 6 areas. Then training that designee will receive, which includes topics like alternatives to conservatorships and supported decision-making, client individual rights, future planning, and person-centered planning facilitation skills. And then lastly, it addresses the contact individual email addresses for anyone who is dissatisfied with regional center's performance in carrying out the delegated responsibilities. Are there any questions at this point that I can hopefully facilitate for you?
Hi, Rosa. Thank you for presenting this and understand the time. Just a quick question where it says the executive director's designee. Who is that typically? Is that a director? Is that a service coordinator? Who would that be?
That is a great question, Bill, because this is the first time we have this type of a position. It's a created position for everyone. It's supposed to be an unbiased third party. So it cannot be the service coordinator. It cannot be the manager or the department director or associate. It will be one staff that we have not hired yet or designated yet that will be responsible for meeting with, I believe it's 31 or so individuals that fall under this category. And they will be responsible for monitoring quarterly visits, reviews with those individuals, at least once every 3 months. So if we have 30 to 32, that could possibly be about 120 meetings, right? But separate from a service coordinator.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Rosa, I have a question.
Sure.
So this needs to go to DDS before we have our next board meeting in December, correct?
Correct. November 30th is our 120-day deadline.
Ooh, yeah, okay. I was trying to figure out where did the 120 days and then the November 30th come into play, but okay, yes. That makes sense. So this doesn't comprise the actual, is this going to be a new hire?
You got it, Rosa. We're still assessing to see the workload impact and what that looks like. So we're still trying to iron out some of those logistics. And I also wanted to highlight what Rosa mentioned. I think it's important for the policy that the board will approve this policy to move forward to DDS for DDS to weigh in and either adopt or approve it as well. So it's one of the steps in this process before it becomes an official policy, but our policy matches the language of the directive. So I think it should be clear, hopefully, in there, but we're still assessing that position internally to see what that would look like for us.
Okay, thank you.
And do you need me to stop sharing at this point?
Do any other board members have questions with regards to this policy? Okay. All right. Well, this is going to be part of our consent agenda. So thank you very much, Rosa, for that.
I thank you for you guys' time. We really appreciate it.
And thank you to the Advisory Committee for Individuals Served and Their Families for their, no doubt, thorough review and recommendation of approval to this board of directors. So thank you. All right. We shall move on then to the review of contracts that we have, who will be presented by Tim tonight.
All right, thank you. Good evening, President Chutney, board members, community members, DDS, and regional center staff. I'd like to present 4 service agreements this evening in the order listed in this evening's agenda for the board's full board's consideration. The first service agreement is with Insight for Life, EBSH at Giano, for their EBSH home, which is an enhanced behavioral services home. Insight for Life, EBSH at Giano, has been open since January of 2022. An enhanced behavioral services home is licensed by Community Care Licensing and certified by DDS to provide 24-hour medical care or non-medical care to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who require enhanced behavioral supports, staffing, and supervision in a home-like setting. Each of these homes does have a maximum capacity of 4 individuals. In addition to the enhanced monitoring from San Gabe Pomona Regional Center, these homes are also monitored by the Department of Developmental Services. This particular home was awarded from the department in fiscal year 2020-2021. Individuals that reside in this particular home, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, will have severe behavioral challenges. They may also have health-related conditions that require a restricted or non-restricted health care plan. And because of these needs, this particular home has both enhanced staffing and consultant services that include a board-certified behavior analyst, nurses, and psychological services. Individuals that are considered and are living in this particular home may have come from a state developmental center, a locked mental health facility, or could be referred from regional centers through the department's statewide specialized resource service program. The home is owned by a housing development organization, Brilliant Corners, which was also funded through CPP funds in the fiscal year of 2020-2021. And so I will pause to ask if there are any questions from the board.
Thank you for that one. Does the board have any questions for Tim about this particular contract? I'm looking around. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. The second service agreement is for People's Care for their supported living service program. People's Care. I'm sorry, was there a question?
No.
Oh, no. People's Care has been providing a wide range of services and supports to individuals served by San Gabe Pomona Regional Center and Regional Center statewide since 1999. Their supported living program, which started in 2007 and is the subject of the service agreement. Supported living services are provided to individuals who reside in their own home. Services that are provided are based on each individual's individual program plan goals and outcomes and are designed to increase an individual's daily living skills, access and use of generic resources like in-home support services and CalFresh, and the development of that circle of support. Supported living services are provided in the person's home and or community. They can provide up to 24-hour support. Supported living services are designed to decrease that reliance on paid support and again accessing those generic services that are available to anyone in the community. People's Care Supported Living Services currently supports 6 individuals. And so I'd like to pause to ask if the board has any questions.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Tim, I have a question.
Sure, pretty.
Are all these 6 individuals that reside in the regional center clients or not?
Yes, it's a great question. The 6 individuals that are currently receiving services from People's Care Supported Living Program are individuals that are served by the regional center. They live in their own settings, their own apartments, so that means they have control of that property, whether it be through a lease or rental agreement, or maybe they own that home, I have a mortgage for it. But the individuals that are part of this particular service agreement are individuals that are served by Sandgate Pomona. Now, People's Care does provide supported living services to individuals, maybe at other regional centers. They may have a separate vendorization, or it could be possible that regional centers may share a vendorization. But again, they would then in turn, if it was subject to a contract or a service agreement, that particular regional center would take it to their board.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Preeti.
Any other questions for Tim about People's Care? Okay.
All right. The third service agreement is also with People's Care, but this time for their specialized residential facility called Cameron Home. The specialized residential facility that is subject of this agreement has been open since 2015. The home serves individuals that are 18 and older and served by a regional center. They have a diagnosis of both an intellectual and developmental disability, but also may have a mental health diagnosis. This home was developed using community placement plan funds from fiscal year 12-13 and has a delayed egress and secure perimeter. The individuals living in this home have moved from state developmental centers and other locked settings. Due to the health and behavioral needs of the individuals in this home also has that enhanced staffing and behavioral supports, as well as nursing based on the individual needs of the individuals that live in the home. The home is licensed by Community Care Licensing as an adult residential facility and currently serves 4 individuals. So I'd like to pause to ask if the board may have any questions regarding this service agreement.
No questions, but I had to remind myself what delayed egress meant. So
Yeah.
that up. But any other questions for Tim about this People's Care particular home? Okay.
All right. Thank you. The last service agreement is with Vocational Innovations West for their community integration training program and supplemental supports. Vocational Innovations West has been providing day program services to individuals served by Sandgate Pomona Regional Center since 2018. They provide similar services to individuals served by both Regional Center of Orange County, Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center, and Inland Regional Center. For us, they currently have 3 day programs here in the Sandgate Pomona Regional Center area. A community integration training program offers participants 18 years or older opportunities for community integration, with most of the program day based on each person's desires, preferences, and their IPP. Activities are geared towards employment, including volunteerism, pre-employment skills, competitive integrated employment. Individuals referred to the program have moved from a state developmental center or other locked setting, like an institution for mental disease. So the program does provide highly trained staff, behavior intervention professionals, and consultants. Currently, this program supports 35 individuals. As I mentioned, this service agreement also includes supplemental day program supports that are needed to implement an objective and a particular participant's individual program plan. And because of that supplemental staffing, it allows that individual to remain in that program and be able to participate. Supplemental day services program supports included but not limited to assistance and training and skills needed for daily living or socially appropriate skills to address any kind of a challenging behavior. Only one of those 35 individuals I mentioned earlier does receive that supplemental support at this point in time. So I'd like to pause and ask the board if they have any questions.
Board members, do we have any questions for Tim about Vocational Education West? Tina, do I see your hand? You're muted, Tina. You're still muted. I can't unmute you. Oh no. Yeah, I want to give her a chance.
Can I unmute her? No, I don't know. No, I can't do it either.
Who are we trying to unmute?
Oh, there we go.
Tina, there we are.
Okay. With like you said, with what is those 6 clients or whatever that are currently in their own homes or whatever by the regional center. Okay, would they be able to do things by themselves, like go out into activities and stuff?
That's a great question, Tina. I think you're referring to the service agreement for supported living.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So these particular individuals, they, definitely are, part of the concept and idea of supported living is that, they're participating, just like anybody else, grocery shopping, going to stores, restaurants, movies, and so forth. They may need that additional support with which to do that, whether it be maybe arranging or organizing that. Sometimes people don't need that level of support, which is really great about supported living, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Based on the needs of that particular individual, they can, in supported living, receive up to 24-hour support. But again, it really is based on that individual need. So maybe somebody in supported living just needs a little bit of support, and maybe other people need more intensive supports with which to, again, stay in their own apartment, being able to access the community, ride public transportation or other types of transportation, be employed, all those different things that an individual may want to do in their community, going to church, going to different activities, and so forth.
Okay. How are they, do they have like a staff that would help them to learn how to go inside the grocery stores and shop by themselves?
Yeah, sure. I mean, another great question. Depending on what type of support that individual needs, there would be a staff from the supported living program that could assist them in that. Maybe just Tina, maybe they just need a little bit of help, maybe putting together that grocery list. Maybe those individuals are able to go shopping on their own, but if they do need that level of support, the supported living staff would provide the support up to the need of that particular individual. Hopefully through those supports, that those as they kind of progress, that staff will be able to maybe not need to be there all the time, but again, that staff is always available to provide whatever level of support that particular individual needs. And again, one of the unique things about supported living is that could be up to 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure, you bet. Thank you, Tina.
Welcome.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Tim? Okay, not seeing any. As a reminder for board members, we do have one more item, but just as a reminder, this consent agenda, again, we've run through now multiple contracts, pardon me, and also representation. And so one motion seconded and then approved will approve all.
Yeah.
All of the presentations. Okay, so our final portion for the consent agenda tonight is I'm gonna, we don't have our chair of the Strategic Development Advisory Committee with us here tonight, Bruce, but Trish is going to kindly take over and give us that committee's recommendation.
Thank you, President Chetney and fellow board members. This evening, I would like to make the recommendation of a new board member. At our last strategic meeting or executive finance meeting, I can't remember which one, we had the privilege of interviewing Miss Adriana Pinedo. We had a really great conversation with her about her role. She has been on committees now for over a year, and her enthusiasm and her just overall persona, I think would be, we think would be an excellent addition to this board. And so I would like to make the recommendation that we appoint her as a new board member moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Trish. Do we have any questions for Trish about this committee's recommendation of Adriana Pinedo for board membership? It was a unanimous decision by the committee.
Yes, my notes have a big old yes on it, so.
And Trish takes amazing notes, I must say. So
I try.
So then for our consent agenda, everything that was there presented, I'm going to ask for a motion, please.
Do you want to make the motion that the contracts be approved as presented, as well as Ms. Pineda be approved for board membership?
And Bill, the policy that Rosa presented?
Yes. Yes. I don't know what language is, but the policy is presented. Okay.
Thank you for that. Do we have a second?
Erica. Thanks, Erica.
I saw Tina's hand on that one. Thank you, Tina.
Okay.
Do you have any final comments or questions regarding any of the presented items? Okay, I don't see any or hear any. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Thank you, Chris. All right, thank you. That motion for everything does pass. I appreciate it very much. Okay, we're going to move along to, we do have a two-part training tonight. Our first portion is going to be our linguistic and cultural competency, understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Jesse, I'm actually going to throw it over to you, not to put you on the spot or anything, but to introduce our esteemed guest.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Tonight, what you're going to see is a required training of our board, identified in our board training plan submitted to the department. And we have the privilege and honor of having Lena with us this evening. Lena, I think you'll recognize her from last year. The feedback was very positive in regards to, I think you're here with us, your style and delivery on some really can be a hard topic to kind of dissect and to go through. So we appreciate you being here this evening. And without further ado, I will have you take it over.
Much. Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches. All right. Well, let me get the screen up here. Wonderful. So, as Dr. Waller said, this is a really broad topic. We don't have much time, and of course, like I say every time, none of us are going to be experts on this subject, right? Whether it's 5 hours or 50 hours, this is a lifelong journey. So I just want to say thank you for the invitation to come and share with your board again, and keep planting those seeds. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lena Morana Cereto. I'm the CEO of Bridging Voices Uniendo Voces, and just a little bit of background. My organization and other folks that I partner with, we have been working with regional centers almost about 10 years now, and as the work continues to evolve, new directives come in. So for example, a couple years ago, we were working on the unconscious bias training. That was a mandate. I've actually spent the last couple years really intensely working with the centers. My joke when I'm in person is that I probably deserve a badge now because I've been in all these centers for so long. So, we've been working with the language and culture plans. We actually helped San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center with interviews, with focus groups, and with surveys. And I work up and down California, so I get a chance to visit a lot of different communities. I don't say this to everybody, so please keep this to yourselves, but you are my favorite center. And last year I had the pleasure, or through this year, I've actually had the pleasure of working on the cultural humility training with a variety of centers. So that's kind of what I want to bring to you tonight. I know it's kind of late at night, so not to throw super heavy topics at you, but you know, one of the big things that I always want to start with is why, you know, why are we here? I was reviewing your website again as I was preparing for this, and my favorite part is always looking to the mission statement. And whether this is something that you see all the time, you know, you might have it right there and present, or it's something that you haven't seen in a while and you also need to revisit. What I love seeing here are the words that pop out for me, like advocacy and inclusion and opportunities. And so I ask you to reflect. If we were in person in a much longer session, I'd have you really journal and think about, why are you passionate about the work that you do? And it's hard work, and I hear that. And I hear that throughout, you know, the conversations you're having tonight, when I get to meet with, you know, not only folks that you serve, but also employees. So just ask you to think for a minute, what is that drives me? As an employee, as a board member, as a recipient of service, as a family member, as a caretaker, what is it that drives me to this mission? And we keep that really present, because a lot of times when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, a lot of folks, you know, tend to shy away from wanting to talk about it because it's about blame for some reason, or about shame, but it's really not. You know, at the core of what we want to do is go back to this mission statement. And so how can you collaborate and advocate and support individuals with developmental disabilities and their families? And you're doing all of this ensuring that every person enjoys a life of meaningful opportunities and inclusion. And it would be great if we could do that in one swoop, right? One size fits all. But the reality is we really can't. Not this regional center, not any of the other ones. Now, this is from your website. I know that there's much more updated information. I get a chance to look at the POS reports for regional centers. And I put this up here just as a brief reminder that this is one snapshot of the diversity that is present at the centers. Now, what I love about your website is you've put not only the ethnicity of the individual served, but you've also put the ethnicity of your employees. And if you look at this, what this tells you is diversity is present. Right? That's not a secret. Diversity is present, and you can see it here. And you know, what's interesting is if we were going to create a pie chart for different aspects of diversity, we would probably see a difference as well, right? So this is looking at ethnicity. If we were looking at language, if we were looking at socioeconomic status, if we were looking at gender, if we were looking at age, if you really take a look at any facet of diversity, we could even go into like how many folks are introverts and extroverts, right? Because diversity is diverse, and that's the beauty of it. What this tells us essentially is that we really can't look at a one-size-fits-all model when we're looking at how do we uphold that mission statement, because diversity is present. And that means that we really have to make sure that we know who we're serving, who you're serving. So what does that mean? Are you going to go to every single person and ask, so what's your diversity look like? What about you? What about you? What about you? And you know, one of the questions that I often get when I work, not only with regional centers, but when I do this work across, you know, the state and the US, people say, well, does that mean that I have to learn every culture? Does that mean that I have to learn every language? And that would not be possible, right? And the other thing about it, you know, people will always ask me, okay, well, can you just give me a list? So how can I work with Latinos? Oof, well, that's different, because working with me as a Latina is different than working with my mother-in-law, which is different than working with my, you know, neighbor across the street. And I'm sure you see that too in the work that you do. So we really don't have a list per se, because there's so much that changes, right? It's very fluid. So what we can talk about is how do we develop a culture of cultural humility within the center? And so, again, this is a much longer workshop, but to break it down, we'd just love to ask you, and you can throw this in the chat if you'd like, or you can just come off mute and share with me. First of all, let's break this down. When you think of culture, what comes to mind for you? And again, you can type it in the chat or you can unmute, but how do you define culture? And there we go. I'm looking for my chat. Here we go. All right. So how would you define culture? What do you think about when you think about culture? Anybody? No, it's kind of late at night. There you go. I think about traditions. Absolutely. Traditions. Anything else? Beliefs. Yes. Does anybody think about food? Kind of late. I don't want to get too hungry if we all start talking about food, but family. Yes. Food. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, and there's some things that are very visible, right? So it could be garments, for example. The religion can be in there as well. Yes, so unspoken, that's going to be really, really important. And the thing with culture is that there's levels of culture. So there's things right at the surface that are going to be really easy for us to share. Yes, celebrations, absolutely. We can talk about, what are holidays we celebrate? What are days we observe? How do we celebrate those? The time of year that we're in, for example, I think about myself and my Mexican culture, and I have Day of the Dead coming up, and my family and I were talking about setting up our altar. And that's definitely something that's very, very much close to us, but it's very surface because we can talk about it, you could see it. We also then have two other levels of culture. Yes, and there are workplace cultures. We'll talk about those. Culture that's a little bit more shallow and then deep. And if I ask you to think about those are going to take some time because just like it was said in the chat, you're talking about unspoken. These are the things that are kind of baked into you, part of your life that you might have to think, well, what is my culture's thinking around, are we a collectivist culture? So is it kind of like everybody together? Do we make decisions together? Or are we more of an individualistic culture where it's kind of like every person, for themselves? How do we do in terms of communication? Are we a culture that, is big on expression and hugging and, we share our feelings? Or are we the type of culture that kind of keeps it to ourselves and, we don't? So there's a lot of facets of that. So great, we got culture down, and we have to remember that culture changes. It's fluid, right? It's ever changing, especially when we think about immigration and things like that. I always think about what did my culture look like when I was in my home country of Mexico, and then my parents bring me here, and some of the things we've kept, some of the things have evolved, some of the things we've adopted from this new place that we live in. So culture's ever changing. Now, let me ask you the same question about our second word here. And again, feel free to type in the chat or come off mute. What do you think about when you think the word humility? Humility. Yeah, not putting yourself first, seeking to understand. Excellent. Perfect. And a lot of the time, and I grew up with humility in Spanish, thinking the word humilde, which always kind of meant like somebody, there you go, being humble, somebody who maybe like had less or wasn't kind of like too flashy, didn't, wasn't all about them. And the reality is just like the quote says, it's not thinking less of yourself. It's not that you have to be less than or meek or weak, but it is thinking, okay, so here I am, right? And what's my place in the world? Yes, free from pride and ego. And what is kind of my place in the larger system? And perfect, thank you so much. Not only can I understand who I am and the culture that I bring, the values that I bring, but also am I open to learning about others? And that's kind of that stepping point for humility, is saying it's okay that I don't know everything. And I gotta tell you, I'm a parent and I'm a business owner. And the one thing that always lifts a weight off my shoulder is to be able to say, I don't have the answer, and that's okay, right? I don't have the answer, it's okay, but I'm willing to learn. And that's what happens a lot of time with issues of diversity and inclusion. People will make a mistake. For example, they'll misgender somebody, and immediately they feel guilty and they'll say, you know what, this is why I don't do this, forget it, I'm not talking to anybody, and I'm just gonna stop talking. But really, cultural humility would tell us it's okay to make that mistake if we're willing to learn from it. and if we're willing to move on and keep that learning mindset happening. So cultural humility is important because our cultures are a part of us. And yes, just like you said in the chat, not only do we have our own culture, think about, who you are.
Không phải là chúng ta có một cái văn hóa riêng của mình.
Oh, I hear another voice. I think it's one of the interpreters. So you have the culture of yourself, and then you have the family culture. And maybe those don't always match. And I see that a lot with people that you serve, right? We have the person served, and sometimes their family does not, they don't share that same culture. Because sometimes we have folks who are first generation, born in the US, and their families are coming from other countries, right? Second, third generation. Now, you also have the culture of St. Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. And does that always match with my culture, And then you have kind of this broader culture. And sometimes there's things that are kind of just out of our control, which is our social political context. But we can't ever just pull one of these on their own because everything is kind of existing at the same time. So how do we work in a complicated place like that? So here's what I'm going to ask you next. I'm going to put an image up on the screen. And again, feel free to chat, or you can also come off mute. And the first thing I want you to do for me is just tell me what you see. And literally, I mean what you see. I don't want you to read into it. I promise I'm not tricking you or anything. Just tell me what you see. Is everybody good? What you see on screen. All right, I see some thumbs up. Here we go. What do you see? Type it in the chat. Say it out loud.
Like I see some elephant drawings.
Yes, elephant drawings. You got it. What else? Elephant painting elephants. Okay. What else?
Looks like a rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros. Yes. What else? Perspective. Okay, hold on. We're getting into what we notice. Let's just talk about what we see. What else do you see on the screen here? Each picture has the rhino horn. Okay, same art. All right, now let's move on to the second question and tell me, because now you were going there, what do you notice? And somebody said perspective. So what does that mean? Perspective.
I think I thought it was because he was looking at the elephant from a different perspective, but then I noticed the horns. So then I was like,
so you got a couple even perspectives just looking at it, right? First we thought, well, maybe it's just the elephant, the way that the horn is there. But now noticing maybe it's the rhino and the horn.
I think he always includes himself in the picture first.
The rhino always includes himself in the picture. Okay.
How it relates to him.
Oh, and how it relates to him, yeah. Commonality, the horn dominates. It's always in the center. Yeah. So the last question, and I know, granted, we're doing this in 20 minutes and not, an hour, but any connections that we can make between this image and what we're talking about in terms of cultural humility? How do we bring this together? It's in his vision. There we go.
You have to put your perspective aside, right?
Well, yeah. So, okay, one, we see in the chat, we tend to see everyone through our own lens.
Right.
And then I'm hearing, but we got to kind of put our perspective to the side. But the question is, do you think the rhino knows that horn is in every picture? Do we think that the rhino's aware that the horn is in every picture?
It might not.
Maybe not, right? Mm-hmm. Do we think that the elephant knows that that horn is going to pop up?
Not until he sees it.
Once he sees it, yeah. So we don't know, right? And so perfect. See, you are great at this. You are one step ahead. Here's the cultural humility connection. Like I mentioned, we all come into the room with our own identity and our own culture. And it's like a puzzle because it's not just one thing, right? It's many, many pieces that make us. And I can't just pull one out and focus on that, because when I come to you, I'm all of these puzzle pieces. But of course, my identity and culture encompass who I am. And just like you said, because you're right on, the perspective that I have, my culture, it dictates, what lens am I using? So because I have all these identities, all these cultural experiences, all these cultural values, what ends up happening is I see the world with my own horn, if you will. Now, that's not a bad thing, right? Because what if the elephant went on Instagram and said, oh my gosh, this is the best artist I've ever seen. Yes, I want that artist to paint me. Right? So the elephant could have chosen that particular artist because the horn was there. Because you don't know, maybe the elephant wanted to cover something up in the middle here. I don't know. So what lens am I using? Now, if I am the parent of a child with a developmental disability, that gives me a horn, right? Because I have a perspective. But what it also does, because just like the rhino, is it also creates some blind spots for me. If I'm a service coordinator and I don't have children, for example, that's a blind spot that I have. And again, it's not a bad thing, but it definitely creates these blind spots for us that make us think, well, what am I not seeing? So I have all these pieces of my identity, of my culture. This is what, creates who I am. And those things, are great, but they can also create some blind spots. And what we have to consider is we can't ask the rhino to chop off his horn, right? That's not something we want to do. We can't say, hey, chop it off, because it needs it. There's a reason why the rhino has its horn. And we can't say, well, hey, stop thinking the way that you do, right? As a woman, or as an LGBTQIA person, or as a Korean person, or somebody who speaks Vietnamese. We can't say that because that's who they are. Those are part of their identity. But again, all of those things can also create blind spots. So what we want to move into is, in terms of our actions, who we are, including our culture, is going to inform what we do. So being conscious of that is going to be the first step. And that's a little tricky, isn't it? Because again, we don't know if the rhino knows that the horn is in every image. It could be that it does, it could be that it doesn't. So I won't have you do this now because again, it takes some time, but 2 questions that I want to leave you with for tonight, at least. First, what are your personal horns or blind spots? And that is not the easiest question to ask, because what I'm asking you is, hey, what's that horn of yours that you're painting into every picture? And if that's a little bit hard, I'll share some of my blind spots. Because of the work that I do. So, for example, because I grew up, and yes, my parents were immigrants, and yes, our second language is English, but my parents had the opportunity to go to school, to learn English, and to be bilingual. I think I have a blind spot that everybody should be able to do that. So it's interesting for me, right? When I hear, especially Latinos say like, oh, well, I don't speak English and I've been here for so long. And that's always a horn for me, because it's not a bad thing. It's just the way that I was raised. But the thing that we have to do is understand, okay, it's okay that I have that thought, right? It's natural, because in my culture, in the way that I grew up, this is my story. But I have to check it and say, time out, Lena, that is not everybody else's story. And if I stop there and I just say, oh, well, that means that they're terrible people because they don't want to learn English, that's when we run into some issues, right? But if I stop and I say, well, let me ask some questions, right? What maybe prevented them from wanting to learn English? Or maybe they just didn't want to learn it at all. And that's okay also, right? And that's the cultural humility part of asking questions instead of making assumptions. So I will leave you for homework to think about in terms of the work that you do. What are some of those personal horns or blind spots that you have? And then sometimes folks have an easier time with this second question, but think about the organization think about St. Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. And it could be that you look at it as an entire organization. Maybe you break it down by board, by staff, by folks served. But what are some of the organizational collective horns or blind spots of the organization? And one way to think about this could be, I don't know if you've ever been in the setting where people say, oh, well, we've always done it this way, or that's the St. Gabriel Pomona Regional Center way. And those are not necessarily bad things, but those are horns, because once we start doing things one way, it kind of gets baked into our organization, and then we continue to do them that way. Yeah. So this is first part of the work of cultural humility, is really doing a deep dive into, so what is my culture? Who am I? What are all these pieces that, make the puzzle that is me? And we don't always get a chance to talk about those. And for some of us, we don't always get to share those freely, because there are those social political contexts that get in the way, that prevent us from sharing who we truly are or accessing services. And I always think about, for example, I think about my culture, and how did my culture think about disabilities? Well, growing up, I don't remember ever talking about them. And that says something about what my culture thought. It was something that needed to be hidden, right? It was something we couldn't explain, so we just had to hide it, and we weren't going to talk about it. And if somebody in our family had a developmental disability, we wouldn't even mention it, something like a secret. So if I grew up in a culture like that, what does that mean when I come into Regional Center and folks are offering me help, or they're offering me support, right? And so one of the things I always think about is, I got to do focus groups with a lot of your community last summer, especially. And I will never forget, we were actually in a session with Korean folks that are served and their families. And one woman said to me through an interpreter in Korean, she said, Lena, I don't think that the regional center doesn't understand my culture, or they don't respect. Sorry, it wasn't that they don't respect it. I just think maybe they don't understand. And I said, tell me a little bit more. And she said, my service coordinator is great. They don't speak Korean, right? But we get along through an interpreter. But she's always saying, advocate for yourself, advocate for yourself. And that's a very Western thought, right? A very US centric thought, to advocate for yourself. And it's not a bad thing, right? Not at all. And yes, this is person-centered thinking, is very, very important. But she says to me, my culture, we don't ask for things. It's not in our culture to ask for anything other than what's given to us. So if I get 3 hours of respite, I get 3 hours of respite. And the thought of me even saying, no, I need 5, would be unheard of in my community. And so she said, when I hear advocate, 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 what I'm hearing is go against what you've learned your whole life. So the work there for the service coordinator is not to stop saying advocate, right? Because this is what you're trying to do. This is the person-centered work. But it's thinking about, okay, now that I know this, or how do I even get to know this? Because this is something she told me in a focus group. But how does a service coordinator even get to that information? Okay? And once you know it, how do you work in a way that's culturally responsive and says, okay, so I do want the family to advocate, but I understand that that's hard because their beliefs, tell them not to. So how do we work around that to make sure that they can still do it in a way that's respectful to them and it feels respectful to their culture, right? And a lot of this work is going to be about asking questions. That's where the humility part comes in. Ask the question, ask the question. I know when we did the focus groups, there were so many folks who were very willing to share about their culture, about their beliefs, about, their background. And a lot of folks who were really, really happy to get to speak in their language, which is, I'm so happy to see all of the interpreters on here tonight. Thank you for being here, because that is just the beginning of communication. So this I shared with you last year, and I'll bring it back up because why is it important? This is great, right? And again, we think person-centered thinking is fantastic, but there's some things that we have to consider because there are obstacles that get in the way. So I want to just present this to you again. You might have seen this with me or maybe with other organizations, but just some common language. We've been using the word diversity tonight quite a bit. And for our purposes, diversity is the demographics, right? Who are the people? And we saw some of your demographics already. Here in this image, we can say that it's the blue child, the orange child, the purple child, right? That's the diversity that's present. Who are the people? And then we have to talk about inclusion. So these 3 kids that are at the game, what side of the fence are they on? You know, could they actually be sitting in the bleachers? Why is it that they're on this side of the fence, not participating? Do they feel welcome at that game? What's the environment look like? Does everybody that you serve at the regional center really truly feel like they can come in, be their full selves with their cultures and their language, and receive the support that they need? And from there, we move into access. Now, this was kind of the social service approach of like, well, let's give everybody what they need. Yeah. But in order to give everybody what they need, and you can see what happened here is in order for the children to be able to see the game, instead of giving them all just one box, oops, sorry, I skipped over equality. Equality, forgive me, rewind. Equality would be, well, let's just give everybody the same thing, right? And if we give everybody the same thing, great. They can figure it out. And if they don't figure it out, that's on them. But we gave them the same thing. And we see that that doesn't work, because look what happens on the left side. We give them each a box. The kid in the blue, they didn't really need a box to begin with, right? They could still see the game. The kid in the middle, well, we're getting there. They're kind of having to lift themselves up. Imagine watching a game like that. And the purple child, doesn't matter that you gave them the box because they still can't see. So we move over to access, which again is how do we give each person what they need? That's more of the person-centered approach. And that would be amazing and fantastic, except for, is there something else that you notice about this image? So yes, it works to give each one the boxes that they need, but what's the other factor that we're dealing with in this image on the right and on the left? Anybody notice?
Like one has a horn now, one has flag.
Yeah, so we definitely have those. Yes, so in the chat, the fence is still there. Absolutely.
Oh, the fence.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. There's some images even of this that you'll see where they just knock the fence down completely. Absolutely. But the fence is there, and there's something else about that fence that's going on. You see how it's not level? It's not a level fence. So we're not even starting from the same place, because the blue child has a lower fence, so they can already see over, and the purple child is dealing with a taller end of the fence. And not just that, if you look below those boxes, the ground is not even. So the blue child is already kind of on raised ground versus the purple child who's on lower ground. So in order for us to really make access work, we have to address equity and justice. And what that means is we have to look at what are the structural barriers and disparities that prevent all of the people we serve from accessing those services. And that's the work. Really thinking about, and it's going to take some time, right? Because everybody has a different experience. Remember the horn? You're all going to see this through a different experience. Everybody that you ask this question, they're going to tell you something different depending on what their horn is, what their culture is, what their values are. But what I want to leave you with in terms of what's next, and this is work that you've been doing for years now. You're training staff on unconscious bias. You're training staff on cultural humility. I know there's a lot of trainings that are coming in around this, but the ultimate goal is what are some of the examples of these unlevel fences and unlevel grounds. Sorry, that should not say Scott, that should say San Gabriel Pomona, that impact the lives of the people that you serve. So what is different for a person, for example, who speaks Spanish versus an English speaker, right, who needs a different kind of service? And what do we do to address these inequities? And this is where we really talk about the work of cultural humility, because we can't just have a sheet of paper that says, okay, but for every Spanish speaking person, these are the services that you're going to give them. Or for every person, you know, who has autism, these are the services you're going to do. Because as you know better than I, it is very much about being person-centered, but it's about asking those questions to get really down and deep into, so not just the diversity that I can see, but what is their culture? What are their values, right? And then for me, whether I'm a service coordinator or manager, director, or on the board of directors, are there things that I'm doing or saying or actions that are coming from these horns that I have, and I'm not really getting to look around, right? I have my perspective, and it could be the best perspective because it comes from the heart, it comes from a good place, but am I just not getting something? Am I missing something because I'm not seeing around the horn? So that was a lot to throw at you in such a short time this evening, but I hope that you know, it's a continuation of the work that you're already doing. I definitely know that you, the center, invests in this work. I'm always happy to be asked to be here, and I just thought, you know, give you some time for some questions and answers or observations that you have. Yeah, any comments? Okay, while you're thinking about that, I want to show you something. And this is not a gotcha moment. I just want to show you our perspective. Remember, we're talking about that piece, right? So, sorry about that. Let me go back here real quick. Now, did you all notice what happened with the rhino at some point? In the group here, there's something that we did to the rhino. Did you notice? And this is a perfect example of how our perspectives are going to shape our actions. Anybody notice?
We made it a male, correct? Yeah.
Yes, we gendered the rhino as a male, and it started with one person, right? Somebody said like, "Oh, he," and then kind of other folks were just saying, you know, he. Now, that's not a terrible thing. We're not going to hurt this poor rhino, right? But think about it. For those of you who gendered it male, what led you to that? If you don't mind sharing with us, what led you to thinking that this particular rhino was male?
I had no idea that I did that. I looked back at a comment I made and I said he, and I had no idea until I saw it.
To connect that to the unconscious bias, there's something in there. There's a file in your brain that the minute you saw this image, it kind of got pulled to the front and you said, oh, male, right? And so I love that you said, I don't know how I did that, because that's the unconscious part, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Does anybody have it consciously? What might make you think that the rhino is male?
I think because I always think of rhinos being aggressive, and so that's where it just came from.
Thank you. That's very honest. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
I realize it's my own lack of. I just thought, I never thought of a female rhino. I always consider a rhino as a guy. I mean,
there you go.
I have no idea why, to Julie's point, but it's just, of course.
Yeah, and all of those things, thank you for your honesty, because again, that's your own horn, right? If you only ever heard about male rhinos, of course you would think it's a male rhino. And Karen, you were talking about just thinking about aggression, right? And that's a personality trait, for example, that we would associate with male, or that you would, because that's your horn. So thank you for sharing that. Now I want to tell you, my colleague and I did this presentation, something similar to this, with a zoo. And every time we do this, pretty much undoubtedly it comes up that the rhino's a male. And in this particular session, everybody kept saying she, and she, and she. And we said, time out. Why is everybody calling her she? And they said, oh, because, well, we know we work with rhinos, and this particular rhino with that particular horn could only be a female. So talk about the horn, right? Their experience working with animals led them to knowing that. So just wanted to share that with you. Again, not a gotcha moment, but just an example of that's how our experiences and our culture kind of lead us to our perspective, which then impacts our actions, right? So the rhino's okay, I think. But of course that there are actions that could be harmful in the way that we, interact with clients or interact with people served, or even within staff or our own peers. So any other questions, thoughts, comments?
I think for me, what I'm sort of taking away from this is the hopefully optimism that everyone comes at this from a place of good intention, right? Because you talked about how basically everybody's human, everybody has their own unconscious bias, and we may not want to offend, but we are going to make mistakes. But if we can all come at any sort of discussion, any sort of situation with a good intention, how far that can actually carry us.
Absolutely. And I think it's a two-part, right? So assuming the good intention, but also being able to recognize even my good intention didn't have the best outcome, right? I still hurt somebody accidentally. And not only am I going to understand it, and just say like, oh, okay, ouch, it hurt. And not stop there, but say, so how do I change this for future? Like, what action do I need to take so that my good intention could have that good outcome, right? And that's the humility part. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts? Well, I will leave my contact information with you all if you think of anything. Again, thank you so much, Jesse, for inviting me here tonight. For you all, I know it's a long night for you, but I appreciate the participation and the enthusiasm. Always really, really great to visit San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center and continue to be a part of your DEAIJ journey. Thank you so much.
Then if I may say thank you on behalf of the board and the regional center. I've seen different variations of your trainings, and you always have a way of doing the refresher, I think, for us, but also keeping it vibrant and lively. And I think it makes us think, and it plants the seeds for the scope of how we should be kind of considering things. And so the feedback, and I don't mind saying it publicly, is just very positive from your delivery and your style and your way of making it. These are hard conversations, as I mentioned earlier, and you just have a way of having us kind of think. And so the feedback during the training I've been getting has been positive afterwards. And so you were requested for this. And so just want you to have that lens in the work that you're doing from our perspective of the meaningfulness that you have for us. So I just want to say publicly thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you very, very much.
All right, we are moving through our training season for this evening. Next up, we have Judith Enright for Ochiltree about roles and responsibilities of board members, I believe, along those lines. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us this evening. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm always happy to be at San Gabe. I have a little bit different subject matter tonight. I'm talking about the whistleblower policy for the regional center.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
Every regional center has one. And so let's talk about why. I'm going to share my screen so we can all be looking at the policy. And did it come up?
No.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. So let's talk about why you need a whistleblower policy. If any of you see something that the regional center is doing, that an employee is doing, that a board member is doing, that a service provider is doing, that anybody is doing with regard to services for persons served with money from the Department of Developmental Services, it's important to report that. And what you report is a violation of state or federal law or a regulation, contract provisions, fraud, which means somebody is lying in order to get something that they're not entitled to, stealing, basically, fiscal malfeasance, misuse of government property, doing obviously really bad stuff, whatever it looks like, being grossly incompetent or inefficient, then there is a way for you as an employee, as a board member, as a service provider, as a contractor, as an individual served, as a family member, or as a friend of the regional center, to report that. You report it through the whistleblower complaint process. And that process is outlined in this whistleblower complaint form. So they have the policy of if there's a violation of federal or state law, et cetera, et cetera. And then the filing of the complaint is a process of reporting by fax or in writing or phone or email or a letter or in person. And we'll discuss to whom you make those reports. Any reasonable suspicion, concern, evidence that you have. And so what you do is you contact an individual, or let's look right now at who you'd contact. I'm moving around a little bit, so hopefully it's more understandable. But please stop me with questions. You could contact Dr. Weller, Erica Gomez, Lucina Galarza, Raquel Sandoval, Salvador Gonzalez, and Jaime Anabalon. Or you can contact the Department of Developmental Services or the board. And what you tell them, you provide a clear and concise statement of whatever that has been done that's not right. And you provide facts and evidence to support it if you have them. So you would submit copies of documents because you wouldn't get them back, and a description of what's going on, or you just tell the person what's going on. This is not the same as a fair hearing. This is not about whatever services are in the IPP or the IFSP. It's not a citizen complaint. It's not a 4731 complaint. It's none of those things. It's when you see something that's going on that's just plain wrong, and somebody needs to know about it. So if you can let them know who you are and provide them with information, that's the best, because that allows them to contact you and investigate. Sometimes you have to do it asking for confidentiality, and that's fine. The problem is if you don't let them know who you are and who they can contact about it, they may not be able to investigate. They have to have the facts in order to investigate. So it's kind of a balancing act about whether you're willing to stand up and say what the facts are and have your participation be acknowledged or not. And that kind of makes a difference as to how much can be reported, how much investigation can be done. So whoever gets the complaint will send it to the person who's best able to investigate it. So if, say you think somebody is misusing regional center funds, they're somehow or other getting services or getting money that's not right. Whatever evidence you have about that is what you need to report. And that evidence will be taken and investigated, and the investigator will report back to you, if they have your name, about the results of the complaint and what was done, unless there is a confidentiality issue about a person served or an employee issue or some other reason for confidentiality. But you can be confident that the complaint will be investigated, that whatever action is necessary will be taken, and that it will be resolved to the best of anybody's ability. So you want to report the name of the person involved, where they work, who witnesses are, and documents. A really important thing to remember is that you will not be retaliated against for filing this complaint. Nobody will be able to take action against you because you filed the complaint. And if improper action is taken against you for filing that complaint, then you report that, and the person who retaliates against you will be disciplined up to termination. The other thing to remember about this is that it's got to be in good faith. And that means that you have reasonable grounds for what you complain about, and that you're not filing it to hurt somebody with an untrue claim. That would be really not good. So what you do is you submit all the evidence you have, you cooperate in the investigation, and you wait for the regional center or the Department of Developmental Services or whomever you've sent the complaint to do the full investigation and do what it is that needs to be done, whatever action needs to be done to stop the misuse of funds or the fraud or whatever it is that you're complaining about. And it will be kept confidential, as I said, to the extent that it can be. If there's something involved abuse, that has to be reported. Anything that's legally required to be reported may not be kept confidential, but to the extent that it can be, it will be. And the state is so concerned about this that they want to make sure that you know about this whistleblower policy every year, and it gets sent out in board packets, and we discuss it so that you know what's available to you and what you have to do. All you have to do is make a phone call to Dr. Weller or Erica or any of the other people that we talked about and explain what you're concerned about and provide them with the evidence that you have, and make sure that you're not guessing about something, you're not passing along gossip that you don't know is true, that you really believe something's wrong, and then action will be taken and it will be resolved. So that was a really fast compilation of this, but I know you've been listening to a lot of things. Did it raise any questions? Okay. Was it, do you have a better idea of what a whistleblower complaint is and what you can do with it? That's what I'm hopeful of. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Judith. I think it's, I know this is one of our mandated trainings from DDS, but I think it's very timely, and it's a very good thing that we have this every year as a nice reminder to bring it back to top of mind, that
Yep.
there are safeguards, in place for wrongdoing that is seen. And I thought it was really good actually to touch on, once again, the whole idea of acting in good faith. That was an interesting portion to me too, and just the number of different individuals that someone can go to should they have a complaint. So it's not just one individual. There's various avenues depending on the person's comfort level. So
Lots of places and lots of things to complain about, both at the regional center and with service providers. So if you see anything wrong, you've got an avenue to report it.
absolutely. Board members, any further comments or any other questions for Judith? And we have this on our website, of course, readily available for anyone, any member of the public to access. We have that transparency button. Every single regional center has that. It's yellow with an eye on it. Every regional center has that on their website to take you directly to the governance and the policies and everything that has to be made public. So that's where you can go to find the whistleblower policy as referenced by Judith in this presentation.
And you don't need a form. All you need to do is make a phone call.
Even easier.
Yep.
Even easier.
So that's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Board members, one board and community announcement is that we are heading into the holiday season. I feel like I blinked and it's coming upon us. So our next board meeting would fall right in the week of Thanksgiving. And I won't be here on the fourth Wednesday of November, but we will have our next board meeting on the 11th of December. We do this every year. So that's when all of us will reconvene again. We'll see each other in a little more than a month. Until then, happy Halloween, happy Dias de los Muertos, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.